Ben, this is your end of day market recap for Wednesday, November 5. Nice move back for the indices today. Where I will go through some technicals for you, and very interesting to see where these things bounced. Pretty much right where the MarketWebs value areas kind of told us where there was some support, so that worked pretty well. A little bit of a fade there at the end of the day, but I think all in all. And we did hit some short-term resistance, but I think, just keep in mind, this is going to be, I don't know if markets go straight back to where they were. It could be a little bit of backing and filling. We saw that last month as well. So I'll go over some of these points in just a second here. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through, of course, in this video is for information purposes only. Best looking sectors, and I'm going to zoom this in here a little bit so that you can see the screen. Solar was up 7% today. The clean energy ETF, which also obviously has a lot of solar in that too, is up 5.7%. Gold miners, Bitcoin bounced back today. Maybe I'll start with that chart in Bitcoin, because I always say I'm going to review Bitcoin, and I always kind of forget to in these videos, but I'll review that. Gold miners bounced back too. They were up 3.5%. What didn't perform? Energy, oil and gas exploration producers were down 1%, as well as excuse me, aerospace and defense names were down. KTOS had a bad report, and sank pretty lower, and we're continuing to see that. By the way, there's a lot of really good earnings reports out there. I've got about 85, and that doesn't count today reports, names that I have to add, but from today's strong earnings movers. But I've got about 85 names that have had really strong earnings moves, and again, it's not just tech. There's a variety of different areas that have done it. So again, the goal with doing that and compiling a strong earnings list is these are the names that I want to go after on market dips, and try to get some of these names close to a support level. So that's kind of what what I tend to look at. I'm more of a relative strength investor, where I go after very strong names that are dipping into support. I don't do a lot of counter trend trading, names that are below the 200-day moving average. I leave that for others to try to figure out when those names are going to bounce in downtrends. But it is what it is. Let's start going through some charts, and yeah, maybe I'll bring up, considering Bitcoin had a big day today. I'll bring up the IBIT trade. So let me switch screens here. All right, so here's Bitcoin. Yes, it's getting a lot of attention that it broke the 200-day moving average. Did it retake anything today? It doesn't appear so. I know I've got some. I could probably get rid of some of these trend lines in here if these are kind of old at this point. So I'm going to remove these trend lines, because it's just getting a little bit confusing with that. I do have this trend line drawn. That's a new one that I drew in here. So yeah, nice to see this gap up. It was up 3% today. That's good. That's nice for a bounce. But I still think that this chart is a bit broken. Number one, it's got to get back above the value area for the month. It's also got to reclaim the 200-day moving average. Notice that the bottom of the value area for November lines up pretty nicely with the 200-day moving average. So I like when you have easy analysis, when you could say, hey, I'll go long if this gets above the 200-day moving average, or in this case, back inside the value area for the month, right? And then where your stop price is, right? Where the trade's going to work and where it's not. You could see here as well. You could see that we did get up to the bottom of the monthly value area, and a little bit of rejection there. Now it's not falling back that far. I wouldn't call it a total rejection yet. Maybe just first time approaching that resistance of rejection. We'll see if it continues to move down. But that's also this downtrend line that I recently drew to see that we've rallied up into that. So that's that. I also want to talk gold, because gold had a move higher. Gold is still in a nice little uptrend here. It's definitely has paused. The 50-day moving average is sitting down here. For now, we're sitting inside the value area for the month of November. And I did get long gold a couple days ago. It hasn't really done much except go back and forth. I will not hold it if it breaks. For me, it'll be the 50-day moving average. I'll use a little bit more tolerance than the bottom of the value area. I'll probably use that. We'll see, by the way, with this 50-day moving average, if gold doesn't do anything from here for the next couple of days, this 50-day moving average will rise right up probably to that bottom of the value area, because you could see it's a rising 50-day moving average. All right, so that's that. Again, I sometimes forget these things, but I want to show you the SPY chart here. This is a level that you've heard me talk about, if you're a member, as well as I did do an end of day video yesterday. By the way, someone mentioned to me, they're like, "Hey, you didn't do videos the end of the week last week," and I'm like, "Yeah, I took off some time." And if you want more information, if you want my daily commentary as well as weekend commentary, there's a link right on the bottom of the screen so that you can get access to that, because I go into things more detail. I give you kind of more of my personal thoughts about what I think could happen, and what I said in the weekend video, as well as we did a members webinar on Monday night. I said, hey, I think, excuse me. um, I think that we could come back we could fall down to the top of the value area. I just thought we were too extended here. 20-day moving average was too extended. 5-day moving average was too extended above the 5-day moving average, and it looked vulnerable to me. So so number one, we found support there in the overnight market. You can't see, I'm going to bring up S&P futures in just a second so that you can see that. But what's really nice is just putting in, using multiple time frame analysis. You could see that we rallied right into resistance today. So yeah, great bounce, but now we've got to get through resistance. And not to say that this is short-term resistance, the 680.55, but again, the value areas are telling us, and I actually put this in my midday commentary. You could find that. I said, watch 680.55, right? So again, if you're okay with shorter term trading, that was a great little spot to take some profits, right? And I did that, by the way, in the spread that I put on yesterday. Yesterday, I put on a long call spread for S&P and a short put spread, thinking that, hey, after this dip, maybe we could rally. Also being a little bit optimistic that maybe the government shutdown ends now that the election is over with. So if that happens, the market's going to move. So I have a trade on for that, and I took my first target. I made 20% on the long call spread, and also 20% on the short credit put spread as well. But yeah, I said, hey, I know where some resistance is. Let's lock something in on that. And you can always add things back. If you still have conviction that we're going higher, you could add them back a little bit lower, right? That's the name of the game, right? So here's, by the way, S&P futures. I just wanted to show this too, because you're not going to see this in the after hours. But notice, a little bit different value area, because S&P futures trade more continuous than SPY does. But notice that we came down, we breached the value area for the month, took out this VPOC, right, where we often see demand, and we rallied back up, right? So that's what the S&P futures chart looks like. Again, it's going to be a little bit different, because it's going to track those after hours trades. Let's talk a little bit about the Qs. Because I think the same thing here. I'm just going to bring up Nasdaq futures first. Right? Nasdaq futures, same thing. Like, look at that. We came all the way down to the top of the value area for the month, right? Because we sold off in the overnight market, took out the VPOC, and then reversed higher. Right? Again, this is textbook trading with volume at price and with the MarketWebs value areas. Knowing exactly where the significant areas of demand and supply are, very important. All right, so there's that test, right, of the top of the value area. There's the test and there's the bounce. So does it mean that we're guaranteed to hold it? No, but we know where our support is, right? And you know where to make decisions as long as you're a disciplined trader. If you're not a disciplined trader, then you got issues. But so again, you're not going to see the after hours movement there, but 611.75 is your support. We almost had I think that's a bullish engulfing candle. It's this body. I think it's a little bit, but it's kind of close, too close to tell. Similar thing here. We almost got to the bottom of the value area for the week, and you can kind of see that we turned back down. Now, again, this is quite normal. I think straight up V recoveries are a little bit more rare, but for us to go down, down, up, down, and then maybe back up again at some point, again, I kind of look at what happened in October, where I call this the earthquake, and then I call these the aftershocks. So we went up, we went down, backfilled a little bit, whippy price action, and then we resolved higher for the for the rest of the month of October. So I think that could happen too, but I'm not saying that we go straight higher, right? So that's the story there. IWM had a decent day today. IWM was up 1.4%, and we're holding support. 50-day, we breached that 50-day moving average, maybe a false breakdown there, coming back into here. And this is still has to get through a lot of resistance, short-term resistance, but that's what IWM looks like. So what stood out today? Well, we're getting some good earnings reports. I get that some earnings reports, faded. I think last night was a really tough day to report earnings, but I'll tell you, this is really impressive. This move that happened in light. I mean, after the stock is already up huge, that's very impressive to me. COHR, last I checked, in the after hours market is up decently. It's up to 144. This is another like optical type name. COHR. Remember last quarter, they got crushed last quarter. Here's what they did last quarter, and then it took them about a couple weeks, and then they built back up. I think what they did is maybe lowballed their guidance. Right, last time COHR had good earnings, and but their guidance was a little bit less than what the street was expecting. Some companies do that. Same thing with Arista Networks. Right. And I got long some, I think I mentioned yesterday, I got long some Arista Networks. It may take some time for this to build back up. It's kind of holding right at the bottom of the value where I was able to take a target in this. My entry price was 138. I think I took a target at 146 today, but I think that they just kind of lowballing their guidance a little bit. So again, it may take some time. Where I would be wrong is if this really starts to break and head towards this VPOC down there at 134, right? But I like Arista Networks. Couple names that report. So I mentioned the optical names. Also, it's amazing what the memory names are doing, like the memory chip names. SanDisk is going to report, I believe that's tomorrow after the close, but this stock has been unbelievable. Back at new highs. Western Digital sold off. Remember on the earnings, it sold off a little. It gapped up and then it sold off a little bit and then it came back. I mean, again, these things are up a lot, so it's tough. I even looked at these things yesterday, and I looked at CLS yesterday and said, yeah, geez, do I want to buy the CLS just below the 5-day moving average? I'm like, hey, I'd really like to buy it down here. But some of these names just are not going to give you that type of, the strongest names don't give you that type of a pullback. VRT is another name. That's a heck of a nice bounce on the top of the value area. Stock was up 5.5% today. Then if we look at those mining names, IREN back at new highs. Cipher, which I got long today, did well today. Was up 9.7% today. Very nice move for these stocks. Again, buying these things on a little bit of weakness has paid off in these names. Palantir, which got so much attention yesterday. Look at it; it's holding support. Now, I was long a little bit of this yesterday. I sold it this morning. Again, I'm trying to just do what I need to do in terms of make good decisions. Right? Notice that this came down, took out the VPOC. Shook me out here a little bit when we broke I didn't want to see this break back below, break into the value area for the week, but we got back above. Now, again, did we move right back higher? No, it might take some time. But I did re-add my trade today. So, right around here, I re-added the trade. So I'm like essentially flat. And by the way, like this requires a little bit of tough skin, right? Sometimes you have to enter a trade a couple times before you get it to work, right? This is not for the easiest. For always for the most sensitive, right? Like I said, sometimes you're wrong 2 or 3 times before a stock actually works. It's just part of the game, unfortunately. Tesla had a big day. That was one name that I kept on. It still has to break this 463. So I'm not going to get too excited about this name quite yet, because every time like I think this name is going to do something great, notice this was on Monday. This is at 470. The stock went down to 440 yesterday, right? And is back. So it continues to just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yes, there is a vote tomorrow for Elon's pay package. So let's see. I mean, it has been leaning higher. It looks like it wants to go higher, but there's also a lot of sellers in this too. A couple other names that I thought were really interesting. Well, let's go over Robinhood. I sold my Robinhood yesterday. I bought it back. What was my price? I think for this 136. I think I bought some. So again, I like to buy dips in this, and I think last earnings quarter, the stock didn't do anything exceptional either on earnings. So I'm happy to buy a little bit of weakness, and I think buyers are gonna come in here, which they have so far today. I actually sold a put spread on this thing too, thinking that even if the initial reaction is lower, that buyers kind of come in. So I've taken a quick target at this on 140 already, and now have a little bit of now that I've locked in some profits, now I can kind of hang out with the rest. What else? Lemonade. How about this move today? I mentioned that there's some really good earnings moves. This is up 34% today, right? I think that the short interest in this is 23%. It's 84, 88. Those are some VPOCs above. What else did I want to go over? MDGL, really impressive. This is a name I think I mentioned yesterday, right? I was watching this thing before earnings. It had a couple funky moves, and then started to go lower yesterday, and then rallied pretty hard. So again, a lot of trading opportunities out there. I think I don't know, of course, what the future is going to hold, but so far, what we did today, holding that support that I talked about, I think is a good start, right, to what we did. And it will be interesting if we do some backing and filling, like what happened last month, where we had kind of what I associate that big move down, earthquake, and then aftershocks after the earthquake. That might happen. All right, guys. So that's it for today's video. If this helps, please go ahead and like.